All right, and we're so excited to have Auri here giving us a presentation about .NET 10 and Visual Studio 2026. Handing off to you, Auri.
All right, great. Thanks, Lee. So, going to talk about a number of things tonight. Number one, just .NET 10 overall. Going to talk Visual Studio, C# 14. Obviously, the big items: ASP.NET Core, EF Core, Blazor. I'm a Blazor guy. I love Blazor, and there'll be plenty of time for Q&A. But if you have a question, like I said, put it in the chat, and I should see it. So, what is going on with .NET 10? Actually, how many people have upgraded to .NET 10 now that it's been out for almost 8 months? Has anyone upgraded to .NET 10? Okay. And how many people are starting all new projects with .NET 10? Okay.
We got 2 hands in the room here.
Cool. Can anyone not upgrade to .NET 10?
Honestly, I just tried today and I got stuck and couldn't. And it's not the .NET team's fault. It's one of the dependencies faults that I have. And I ended up in a dependency nightmare.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I don't have a slide for this, but Microsoft got rid of the upgrade assistant. Did anyone notice that? So the .NET migration assistant, which used to handle it all as a wizard, now Microsoft says use AI. And what's interesting about that one is now in order to use the AI tools, you have to pay for them. So you gotta have a Copilot. Oh, no, we're not. My dog wants to be part of the conversation. I'm like, nope. Hold on one second. I'm gonna actually put him outside because he's gonna. Cool. All right. Sorry about that. It's hard to tell a pit bull no. All right. So I am curious if anyone has run into problems where they have to pay for it. I think you do get a number of free credits even if you have Copilot free. So, or you could just use OpenRouter, but not in Visual Studio, right? Visual Studio, you can't do that. But they have announced as part of Build that they're consolidating the Copilot SDK and its implementation. So they're going to kind of level that playing field. So there'll be parity between VS Code and VS proper, I guess, when it comes to Copilot. So if you've been wondering, now you know. Means a lot to me because I use local models a lot and I don't have parity in Visual Studio. Uma, did you have a question? I saw your hand was up. I guess not. Okay.
No. Thank you. I'm good now. Yeah.
Okay. So cool thing about .NET 10, with all of its great capabilities, it is a long-term support release, LTS, and that means it's good through 2028. So you're going to have official support through 2028.
It's available.
What?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot I was off mute. But my fault.
Oh. Okay. Now, .NET 11 is already out. So if you want to play around with the latest and greatest stuff, you can play around with .NET 11. That's not what this talk's going to be about. But yeah, be great to hear some of your experiences with that. I tend to stick with .NET 10 and whatever's actually released because I'm accountable and I've learned that I can do anything I want on my last day. Now, one other cool thing about .NET 10, as Microsoft keeps on trying to compete with like JavaScript and Python when it comes to the .NET languages proper, you can now run .NET as a script. So you can just do .NET run and then whatever the name of the C# is. And I don't think this is 100% new, but they've improved it tremendously. I think it was around .NET 8 that they came out with the new design. I mean, it was .NET 9, I think. They came out with the new design where it's kind of like all a top-level statements version if you're building your program.cs. But now it even installs the NuGet packages. So before you couldn't package NuGet with it. So you had to just use whatever came with .NET and do your imports. But how could you use any NuGet packages? Now you can actually reference the NuGet packages inside of the CS, the C# file. It doesn't have to be C#, it's .NET, right? And it will download, install the NuGet packages, and then run. So if you are looking at using C# as a script, you now have access to all those cool things like Newtonsoft JSON, any number of the tools that you may want. Should you upgrade? I don't think you have to, and even Microsoft doesn't say you have to, but they are saying, look, if you want support, yes, you do. So I gave you a handy checklist. If you want the latest features, upgrade. And if you want the bug fixes, upgrade. For all of us that are Microsoft developers, you have probably noticed Microsoft is not spending as much time fixing older .NET releases. Unless it's a glaring security issue in a supported release, that they don't fix a lot of stuff going backwards. This, for example, with Maui, I ran into a problem with, I'm trying to remember which specific view it was, but they're like, you're right, and we're going to fix that, but we're going to fix that in .NET 10. And we're not going to fix it in .NET 9 and below. I was like, oh. So it kind of forced an upgrade. But if you have bug fixes, don't expect Microsoft to release updates unless it's a security issue. If you're using Maui or Blazor, you should upgrade. If there, and you can do a pretty straightforward assessment using Copilot as to whether you're going to have any compatibility issues. And that assessment does not take long. It doesn't, I don't think it uses a ton of tokens, maybe a few dollars worth if you have a huge project, but that's worth it to get a lot of the capabilities. But if you don't need to, you don't have to upgrade. Your stuff will still work. So don't think that just because a new .NET version came out that everything's going to break. There are other items on here. If you're building a new project, any greenfield development, you should definitely be looking at anything using the latest supported version of .NET. Now, for .NET 8 and 9, if you're on .NET 9 and you need long-term support, you need to upgrade to .NET 10. I have not had a single issue moving from .NET 8 or 9 to .NET 10. Now, I have had issues going from like .NET 6 and above. Like I've had to migrate Azure functions and stuff that are just old and been sitting out there collecting dust for a long time. And you have to upgrade them for compatibility reasons and to use the latest libraries, and that you will run into breaking changes. The good news is today we have AI. It's amazing how quickly it can fix so many things. And it's trained on, the thousands of examples of people who have already fixed it and then foolishly answer questions on Stack Overflow. Kidding. I love Stack Overflow. I feel bad for them because so much of their stuff was taken from them. And of course, and Lee, you mentioned this, if the third-party libraries haven't caught up yet, you should, just hold off. Like I said, you don't lose support, so don't freak out. So Visual Studio 2026, I almost think, as much as I love .NET 10 and all the great capabilities it gives us, you can get by without using all the new features that are in .NET 10. But one thing that you can't get by is a slow development environment. So VS 2026, I don't think Microsoft was holding out on us, but dang it, where has this been all my life? Even with ReSharper installed, I can launch a project and be coding in under 30 seconds. Whereas like VS 2022, sometimes, I had to wait like 2 or 3 minutes just for everything to come up, initialize, scan, etc. All the stuff that's happening in the background. Plus, the way, the extensions are loaded. I mean, we've all been there where we've started trying to move around and then like, oh, one of the menus updates because an extension finally loaded. Or we start typing in the wrong window because something updated. So anyway, 2026 is just absolutely turbocharged. It's incredible how fast it comes up. It does look better, but I think one of the best parts is just how insanely fast it is. The editor has a ton of advancements, just from the ability to view code, to organize it, to collapsing code, just flexibility. It's incredible. And obviously there's Copilot enhancements. Microsoft is going all in on AI. They've added support for MCPs. Now, some of this information is from the January-ish timeframe. MCPs, we've lived with them in Visual Studio now for 6 months or so. Does anyone here not know what an MCP is? No. Okay, good. If you don't know what an MCP is and you didn't raise your hand, it's kind of like an extension for AI where you can do more than what the built-in tools are capable of, such as calling out to web browsers, calling out to Copilot or Microsoft Learn, etc. Like there's one of the cool editor enhancements, I don't know if anyone's tried this, is line compression. So the any white space is actually condensed, so it uses less room on the screen and then lets you have more actual lines of code. They've done something similar also at comments, so comments are not as large as the code itself, and this lets you see more code at once. There's a whole swath of editor enhancements, and it's not just a VS 2026 .NET 10 thing. They now have moved to monthly releases. So every month we're getting something pretty awesome, cool with Visual Studio 2026. That I will say, I don't know how many people dealt with this, but last year they moved to the monthly cadence and things just broke all the time. Did anyone experience that? Like every time they released a new version of VS, it's like they didn't test it. And it looked like there were a lot of complaints in the community. And whatever they did, they got their act together after a few months. And the releases have been quite solid now. So it's pretty cool to see. Definitely make sure that you're updating because you're going to get support for new language features. You're going to get support for new Microsoft services. And if you're tied into the Microsoft ecosystem, you're likely using Microsoft's IDEs. So if you're using Microsoft's IDEs, they update their services all the time, and not all those services are powered through extensions. So like Copilot in Visual Studio, now with the AI credits instead of the premium request units, so AICs versus PRUs, they're no longer, you'll have problems potentially using Copilot in an older version of Visual Studio 2026 that is unaware of how the latest Copilot works. So I tend to recommend these days that you're always on the latest version or no more than 1 or 2 versions behind. So what about C#14? Wow. Wow. There's just some amazing things that have been brought up that are just, yeah, you've always been able to get around it. We've gone around these things forever, but just having them now, even if they're syntactic sugar, is so helpful. And I'll give code examples here, but we'll go through them. But there's the field operator, there's null aware operators, assigning without null checks, extensions have been completely overhauled. And then the DI engine now supports keyed services. Has anyone used any of these features yet? I mean, especially field. Does anyone raise your hand if you've used any of these new C#14? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so what am I talking about? All right. How many people have had to write, like build out the backing, like underscore whatever, like in this case where you had price and you had to, if you wanted to set price with some extra logic, you had to then have an underscore price, decimal that's a private backing field. And then you had to have that logic and set the naming properly. And then, all because all you wanted to do was have some logic around set, but not get. Or just one of the fields had some special logic in it or formatting. You don't have to do that anymore. You can actually now just call it a field. So in this case, you can have set and say, hey, if value is less than 0 in this case, you set the backing field to the value. I mean, look how much code that saves. So you never had access to that syntactic sugar backing field, but now you do. So it's a nice to have. It saves you code. It's easier to read. So lots of good things come from such things like that. Null-aware operators. So originally you had to check for null before you assign something in an object if it was already null. So in this case, you can now use the dot equal sign operator. See how nice that is? To say new customer. So customer, if it's null, then make it a new customer. Or you can say dot order equals new order, and it won't give you an exception if it was null. Yay. Pardon me. It won't give you an exception if customer itself is null. Oh, yeah. I've already kind of covered this, but if user is null, you can now assign it to load profile. So if it won't throw an exception now if the user object is null. So before it would throw an exception, now it doesn't. Extension blocks have been completely redone. I didn't use it. I mean, I've used extensions where we had our static class before, but not as much. But I've read about it, so I'm showing it off. You can now have private fields in your extension classes, and extension classes are now a first-class citizen inside of .NET. So instead of it being just kind of behind, you have to do this, static class, what have you. Now extensions are a first-class citizen, and you can they just have a lot more capability. And if you haven't read about how you can really use this to your advantage, I suggest that you read it. It's very cool. I mean, they spent a lot of time making extensions better. Oh, and then even when it comes to caching inside of extensions, which you couldn't originally do.
And Auri, I think you can do extension. You can do extension methods now. Is that what that example was in the second one?
Yeah, you can do extension methods. Yeah. So I'll leave that up there. I'm trying to make sure I don't go through, like, sit on all of the examples and run out of time.
Yeah. Sorry, that's cool.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I can ramble. I thought this was super cool. Has anyone seen this keyed services with dependency injection? So beforehand, if you wanted to inject different versions of, let's say, in this case, iPayment processor, but of an implementation, you had to do it, well, like this. So you added, the singleton for, let's say you had, I don't know, 10 different payment processors or 2 different payment processors. In this case, Stripe and PayPal. This would be very common in a mobile application or a mobile and web application application scenario where you have a Google Play payment processor, Apple payment processor, Apple Pay, and then Stripe for the website. And you need to inject the appropriate one. Well, yes, you could create this factory and then try figuring out which one is being requested, but that's a lot harder to read. So what you really want to do, though, you want to have your Apple implementation, your Android/Google implementation, and your Stripe implementation, and then inject the appropriate ones into maybe the appropriate API endpoints that you would then call, from the mobile app versus the website. So what you can do when you support, I don't know if I can. Let me see if I can. Can I zoom in? Can everyone see this? Okay. I know the text is kind of small, but what you can do instead of
struggling a bit in the room.
What?
Yeah, we are struggling a little bit in the room.
Okay, here. Is that better?
Yes. Super. Thanks.
Sweet. So before, what you had to do was this. Okay. Does everyone see that? You add your payment processor factory and then your individual payment processors, and then you do what some people would call an ANSI pattern, which is, hey, depending on the provider you're asking for, I'll pass one back to you through this factory. Well, that's silly. What you can do now is say, hey, I'm going to have a keyed singleton. It's an implementation of a payment processor, and it'll be called Stripe. And I'll have another one called PayPal. Then if I wanted to have like an API endpoint for each one, I could say public checkout service and then say front keyed service Stripe payment processor, and I could have like checkout service iOS, checkout service Android, checkout service web, and just get it from the keyed service. And you see how much more straightforward that is than having the factory and maintaining the factory. So pretty cool. The old way still works. Like I was saying, none of these are required, but they sure do make life easier. And definitely the code being easier to read. My gosh, of course, with today with AI, you can say, well, where is this coming from? And it'll help you. But if you're trying to figure things out, that helps tremendously. So ASP.NET Core got a lot of love. Yes, it got a lot of other updates, but these are three that I think are super useful. One is built-in validation for minimal APIs. So I use minimal APIs. Wow, the formatting didn't work out very well on this one. But I use minimal APIs instead of setting up all these controllers. This is especially useful like with Blazor, where I don't want all the overhead, all the pomp and circumstance of setting up controllers. And instead, I just use the minimal APIs. So in this case, you can see how you map post, you give it an endpoint, and before you could pass in the various parameters, but now there's support for validation on those parameters. So you'll get an automatic bad request just by doing this. You can just say, here's the range, here's this is required, and if you've used minimal API, the rest is the same. You can also disable it. So you can actually, if you don't want to have validation, you can use .disable validation. Useful, helpful. I do like the disable validation feature actually, because sometimes I want the exception. Because otherwise it'll swallow it. And sometimes, and this is also true, and this isn't really as much of a .NET 10 thing, but I'm just calling it out. If you don't learn to disable validation in certain cases, you can run into issues where you're like, why does this keep on giving me a 400, but I never hit the breakpoint inside of my controller? Well, it's because the validation middleware is called first. So you'll never get into your function to check for like model.is valid and so forth, because the middleware, especially in the newer versions of ASP.NET Core, handles that preemptively. So where you used to be able to handle it, you used to, prior to .NET 9, I believe, you could hit the endpoint. Now it's just handled preemptively in the middleware, and you have to know when to disable validation. So keep that in mind if you're running into that issue. It was quite the surprise for me. If you don't want all of the overhead of like Blazor's SignalR, which has an open connection to the server, if you just need one-way events sent to the client, well, SignalR is a lot of overhead for that. Even though SignalR, I think, is relatively lightweight, its nature is to keep a connection open. So in .NET 10, the server-side events have been improved, and I think there might have been performance enhancements. I don't recall the other details about it, but they improved server sent events. And so if you're just trying to do like a stock ticker, etc., make sure you're looking at SSE, because Microsoft's bolstered that quite a bit in .NET 10. And I don't know how many people here are Blazor developers. Feel free to raise your hand. Anything that is an operation that you need to just send to the client, just SignalR itself causes, that's a very expensive thing to send that stuff from the server and kind of maintain certain status updates. So you can save that overhead this way. And then we get finally some wonderful EF core updates. ASP.NET Core got some great stuff, but man, a few items that really shine is complex types. So SQL Server, I don't know how many people have watched what SQL Server supports, but you used to have to like choose PostgreSQL if you wanted to support both RDBMS and DocumentDB, and you had to really kind of choose the engine that you wanted. And Microsoft, the SQL team has paid attention to all of that. Like the first-class JSON support. And JSON querying, etc., DocumentDB support, vector database support, etc. And they've really built all of this stuff into SQL Server. I was surprised. I was recently at a Microsoft event in Dallas, and I'm trying to remember the guy's name, but he's like the godfather of SQL. And he's talking about all these capabilities of SQL Server that I had no idea they had implemented. But one that I did know about is first-class support for JSON inside of SQL Server. Has anyone used this yet, where you can have complex objects inside of a field inside of SQL Server, and that you can query it and you get actual performant results?
We've used it on my project, and I got to say I have regretted it every single time for a variety of reasons. But one of them is that if you use an array of like ints or whatever, it sounds great, but when it stores it as JSON, the performance is not good at all. Like, at least there's no way to index it well, and so if you're just trying to look for a single ID inside of an array of like a JSON array, at least we never found out a performant way to do that, and so we've almost always wished that we'd just normalized it fully to begin with. And it works so nicely at first. It's just like a month or 2 months down the road, we have usually been like, man, why did we do that? That was so such a terrible thing. There's probably been a couple places where we've used it and it's been really nice, like addresses where we didn't really need indexing, we didn't really need performance, but like having like a value type as an address is kind of cool. That's kind of handy, but otherwise, in most cases, I just say, I mean, it's really cool, and we were so excited. I just say be careful about it, is all.
Yeah, and Prasad just mentioned the latest SQL Server actually does support indexing on JSON column types. Yeah, that is new. So they do have it now. So you might need to update your column.
Yeah.
Prior to that, Microsoft did have a pattern that you could follow to do the indexing. So you had to create basically like a virtual field, and the virtual field would be indexed. But you had to explicitly call out the field to be indexed. And then, like Prasad's saying, that's no longer a requirement. So you might want to take a look at that, because that was a complaint that we had. What we ended up using it for was a little simpler, which is there was data that we needed at the time that you read a single record. So we didn't really need, like you said, you're like indexing at the time that I originally implemented it in a project, or I said we did. We had that I knew about that indexing issue, and then I had to make the call, and I'm like, well, we only care about this when we read the one record, so we don't have to worry about that. But if we did want to index it, Microsoft did have the workaround. But for people who don't know why this is useful, the point is when you pull the data, or let's say you have I don't know, a user profile, and the user profile has additional rich data in certain fields based on user type. Well, you don't want unlimited fields or all these different joins just to get that data. You can actually just in any framework, you can just populate that field, and it will store it properly based on the database system that's backing it. So for SQL Server, it would store it as JSON. PostgreSQL, I think it also has a JSON type. And at the time had richer support, or it'll support it as text. But when it saves it, it'll save properly for that database management system. And when it retrieves it, it also will retrieve it and inflate it properly. So you don't have all this extra work of managing all these additional entities to support rich objects. You can just store the rich object, and entity framework combined with the database server backing it will take care of it for you. And now it's even more performant where it could support the indexes. Yeah.
But we got a question in the room from JP.
Saves a lot of time. Oh, what's the question?
I think
okay,
he sort of covered it. I was wondering about the Postgres support on that feature.
Yeah,
Did you hear the question, Auri?
Yeah, is the question is Postgres supported? And it's as long as any framework supports it, it should be supported. Now, whether it'll be performant or not, I'm not sure, but I know that I did read that Postgres was something that it was optimized for. Yeah, when I read about it. Does that answer your question?
It did.
I can't tell if you said yes or no.
Yes,
hopefully.
We're good.
Oh, good. Okay, yay. And keep in mind, when I initially researched this, even though some of these features I had used previously before they became even better in .NET, the latest EF, some of these features we got in, prior to .NET 10 being released, because you don't have to have .NET 10 for all the EF features. So anyway, we were using it back when .NET 9 came out. I fell in love with it for certain reasons. We now finally have left join and right join. My gosh, how long has it been that we've been trying to get that? Like, we've had join, and there's been hacks to doing left join and right join, but you now finally have true left join and right join. I'm not going to explain left join and right join. If you don't know what it is, that's okay. If you do know what it is, I imagine you're happy. And then
do you have a code sample? I would love to see that because they always had default if empty.
Yeah, here I am talking about these
But
things, and I'm like, hold on,
there we go. If it's not convenient, don't worry about it.
Here I am. I'm like talking to the slide, and I'm like, I have examples for you. So here's an example of the complex types, just so you can see. So address, street, city, zip code, and in the customer, all I do is have an address. That's it. But I don't have to have a, see right here, it's a complex property. I don't have to have a separate addresses table. I can just set address and be done with it. Now, in the example that I saw online, they were doing this. I don't think this is actually necessary. This is for a code example I took, I'll admit it. I've just put address and just not added address as an entity, and then it saves it appropriately. So your mileage may vary. Here's left and right join. Hopefully this answers your question about what left and right join looks like. A right join obviously would be just the opposite of this. You just swap, DNS. And by the way, I'm happy to give everyone a copy of these slides. So Lee, I'll give you a copy of the PowerPoint or a PDF if you want it. And then, don't worry about something flying by and then you didn't have a chance to see it, or you got to find just the right spot in the video. I'll give you the PowerPoint slides. And then this is cool, named query filters. So, you can say, hey,
pause?
for, the
Sorry.
blog. Yeah.
Pause just a quick second. We had a technical problem. The projector went out. Give me just a split second.
Prasad, to answer your point, I'm not sure what the issues were. If there were issues, I would just update to the latest version of ASP.NET Core. Just update those NuGets and see if the problem's solved. All right. Can everyone see my screen still? Hopefully you can. All right. So on the name query filters, you can kind of see here with like blob, you could add a query filter that is soft delete that returns whether it's deleted, and tenant, which is tenant ID equals whatever the tenant ID is. And then you could actually say, hey, when you query, you can say, ignore the query filters of soft delete. So give me everything that's deleted too. Or get me, what's for specific tenants. So it's easier to understand because you're naming these particular queries. Yeah. So useful. So what about Blazor? I love Blazor. Is it the best for everything? No. But I'm kind of partial to having all my code on the server and not downloadable. That's kind of one of my reasons for liking things like ASP.NET and so forth. I don't have anything really against TypeScript or JavaScript, but I do have reservations around having all my code or IP in the browser. Doesn't mean it's a massive security hole, but it is what it is, and I just watch out for it. Plus, I'm a .NET developer, and it is what it is. So Blazor, the main script is now a quarter of the size. I think they brought it from like 200 something K to like 86K or something. So that's very nice, especially for mobile devices. Even if you have 50 megabit, the smaller the script, the less processing of that script that you have to do. Huge scripts require huge processing. That's the way it is. The built-in template now supports passkeys. And let's see, do I have, oh yeah, I don't have examples of all of these, but some of them are just self-explanatory. Passkeys, if you don't know what those are, that's where instead of using a username and password, there's a unique, I think there's a token of sorts that goes between the server and the client, and then it's only good on that machine or in that browser, and that's it. So it's nice because if you get the credentials, like you, I don't know, I mean, you got the credentials, you couldn't log in on another machine. QuickGrid, I actually had never used QuickGrid before because I'm always using like Radzin controls. I don't use MudBlazer anymore because they went pay. And I was using SyncFusion, but Radzin was very good, and it's 100% free. Instead of like, if you make more than $1 million, you have to pay for us free. So anyway, they've added some enhancements there if you're not using any of the component libraries. So you can now have dynamic row styling that's based on the data you got. You can also now, oh, hold on. Sorry, my dog found another squeaky toy. There was one hidden. So you can now pause and resume Blazor. So, you know, for performance reasons, you can turn on and off. But you can also, if you are going to be disconnected or think you're going to be disconnected, you can actually pause Blazor and it'll save its state. And then when it resumes, it'll resume its state. So you've probably noticed what happens when you lose your connection, your signal R connection, you lose all of your state. This prevents that from happening. So pretty cool. I don't know if I might have an example of that. Yeah, there. So here you can see the user went idle. So you can say Blazor pause. And then when they're back, you say Blazor resume. So the nice thing is like if that tab goes to sleep, what used to happen is you would come back to that tab and all your state would be lost. And so the page would reconnect through signal R. All your state would be lost and everything you were working on would be gone. Well, now you can detect that. And then, you know, so you can see like before unload, Blazor pause. And then when the page refreshes, you can say resume. And now all your state stays and you're in good shape. Oh, there we go. I disabled its camera for you, Lee.
Thank you.
Okay. Get back to the list. Persistent state. This is super nice. So there's certain expensive queries that you're probably doing in your Blazor that you shouldn't be doing. And you can use the persistent state attribute to prevent that and get better performance and save on memory and so forth. So you can take a look right here. Yeah. Hey, if I've already received the forecast data, then don't go get it again. So you can see how you could save that and just have better performance. Because some of these can be long running calls and you don't want to hit that all the time. That's bad. Now, JS interop is a necessary evil sometimes, but it used to be really wonky. Like right here, what you used to do, so you'd invoke void async, right? Eval, which by itself is dangerous. And then you get a result. Yeah, and then, or pardon me, you get your reference to it, and now you could call it. But now you can actually create a proper JavaScript object instance. So you see right here, chart, calls chart, see? instead of eval, you can actually call the function chart, pass data, and then now you can get properties properly. So current value equals call chart. See how nice that is? Get value async of a particular type. And then, so get me current value back as an int, and then boom, it's given to you. You can set properties the same way. So in the chart object, set value animation duration 500. Simple. So you can just see how much better and more readable this is. And just eval is just dangerous. And if you're a JavaScript, TypeScript developer, I mean, eval, yeah, not good. You now have compiled validators. I have not really used that much, but you can now have compiled validators. So I haven't had to try this yet, but this I can definitely see where this would be useful from a performance standpoint. But here, this is how you set it up. Add validation you already had, but now you can say this is a validatable type, and then the validators themselves get compiled. All right, and that is what's new in .NET 10, C# 14, ASP.NET Core, Blazor. Is it Blazor 10? It's probably called Blazor 10. And the latest EF and VS 2026. Any questions about that? Sweet. I love it when that happens.